Friends gather frequently at their house, many of them opponents of slavery. In 1852, a novel is published that stirs the country up like no other book of its time. Uncle Tom's Cabin tells the story of a Kentucky slave who is to be set free, but his owner encounters financial difficulties. Powerless, the slave is sold to a brutal plantation owner who works him to death. The book moves Lincoln deeply. In the wake of its publication, the slave issue comes to a head. More and more states support slavery. Lincoln decides to get more involved with politics. Together with like-minded people, he helps found the Republican Party. A small town a day's ride away from Washington captures the attention of the North. Harper's Ferry has an important railway junction and a large military armory. Radical abolitionists raid the armory, intending to use the weapons to launch an insurrection and liberate the slaves. But the group is caught by the army and hung soon afterwards. The North wants peace, not provocation. But the South sees the attack as a northern conspiracy against its freedom. Lincoln has his own view on the matter. As a firm believer in the rule of law, he doesn't want to interfere with the Constitution, which allows slavery in the South. Personally, however, he strongly opposes slavery. He wants to change things. He decides to run for Congress in Washington and wins a seat from Illinois. The Springfield attorney is a master of words. He often quotes from the Bible and the works of William Shakespeare. In 1855, Lincoln makes a failed run for the Senate. 2 years later, he makes a second attempt. The little-known congressman loses once again, this time to a local hero who already sees himself as a potential president. But his party persuades him to continue. They believe he is the man that can save the Union. A speech he gives in Springfield against the division of the Union suddenly makes him a political star. A house divided against itself cannot stand, he proclaims to his fellow Republicans on June the 16th, 1858.
I took these words from the New Testament. The Bible is a great source of inspiration to me. I'm convinced that slavery and democracy cannot coexist indefinitely. We must make a choice.
Lincoln's House Divided speech paves his way to the White House. 2 years later, he runs for president. 1860. During his election campaign, Lincoln is attacked by the South as a friend of the niggers. But Northern votes tip the scales in Lincoln's favor.
Makes might, and in that faith, let us dare to do our duty.
He has finally made it to the top. He is the new president of the United States of America. But there is no time to celebrate. The country is on the brink of war.
No matter how difficult a decision might be, we must not lose sight of our common goal.
Lincoln travels to Washington under high security. A plot to assassinate him is thwarted at the last minute. At the White House, Lincoln keeps the black housekeeping staff of his predecessor. But he has no time to settle in. In the aftermath of his election, 7 of the 15 slave states had already seceded. The map of America shows the battle lines being drawn. The northern states have elected a president who opposes slavery. In response, the South secedes from the Union, establishing a confederation with their own president. Lincoln, as the lawfully elected president, will not recognize this. If worst comes to worst, he must respond with military action. One last time, he reaches out to the South.
In your hands, my dissatisfied fellow countrymen, and not in mine, is the momentous issue of civil war. The government will not assail you. You can have no conflict without being yourselves the aggressors. We are not enemies, but friends. Today, with no mental reservation.
On a cold winter's day in March 1861, 30,000 people come to hear Lincoln's inaugural address. The new president chooses his words carefully. Against his own convictions, he even agrees to accept slavery where it already exists, if that's what it takes to hold the nation together. The southern states ignore his appeals. 5 weeks later, on April 12, 1861, Confederate soldiers fire on Fort Sumter, a military garrison in South Carolina. This severs the ties between the North and the South. Now the two sides will let their weapons make their case. The Civil War has begun. The first months of the war are a catastrophe for the North. The troops of the rebelling southern states are well managed, while the North's battalions are poorly trained and disorganized. The South fights fiercely for its independence. The North has difficulty recruiting enough soldiers for Lincoln's cause.
Head for the course, men!
But soon the tables turn. Despite its initial success, the South is unable to hold back Lincoln's troops. For 2 long years, they battle to a deadly stalemate. There are victims in every family. Even Lincoln's own family is deeply divided. 2 of Mary's brothers die fighting for the South.